Well, good morning to you. It is the 14th of July. We are zooming through this month in the midst of summer here in Houston. Don't you love it? All this daily heat and rain. Oh, it's terrible. But hey, that's life in Houston during the summer. Carolina Linares is my co-host this morning. Carolina, are you a fan of the weather right now?
No.
Okay. That's
my hair is not a fan.
Yeah. It's just every day. One thing, though, you can pretty much expect the same thing every day, sweltering heat, then some afternoon thunder showers. And the only good part about it is in the evening, it's really kind of cool if the rain stops, and that's not that bad.
You're right. Yeah, in the morning it's kind of cool, and then you never know if you have to take a jacket or not. I'll say I'll be safe. I'll take the jacket in case it rains.
Yeah, that's always a good way to be safe. So Carolina, thanks for being here today as our co-host. You've got a task now of reminding everybody about our social media.
Yes. So we are trying to grow our audience even more. So please follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're Houston Community College District. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Twitter, YouTube, and you can share this up-to-the-minute podcast so you can keep up to date with all of our latest episodes.
Carolina, one thing that's exciting, we've been mentioning over the past few weeks that we're open for business, folks. The campuses are open. Students are back on campuses in some fashion with in-person learning. That's going to increase in the fall. Well, we started going back and forth from HCCTV, and we've got a team of folks there, including our director, who's been working there in the studio to get the podcast studio up and running. Things have changed a little bit over the last 16 months. So there's possibly an opportunity in the near future that you might get into HCCTV. I think you went there last week, didn't you?
Yes, it's been so long, and like you mentioned, so long ago, I've been gone from a year or so. I was stuck in Indiana, so it was so good to go back to the studio, and I got to meet the team again, and they're working on having this transition, having it be a smooth transition now, being virtual in the studio.
It's a few bumps in the road, but we're going to work those out. Okay, Carolina, stand by. We're going to check in with you in just a little while. Our first guest, you see him here twice a month. He's a former student and graduate of Houston Community College. He's now a foot and ankle surgeon. He's across the country in the San Francisco area, known as Doc-on-the-Run. Dr. Chris Segler joins us once again. Chris, good to see you as always.
Hey, Todd. Good morning. Good to see you as well.
Hey, Chris, I know you had something special you did for some of your patients and your followers in social media. You did a live stream yesterday, and I think you did one as well this morning. How did that go? And maybe you can tell folks here, if they're watching, how they can check out your next one.
Yeah, sure. It's really simple. So I send that out periodically to people who follow the Doc-on-the-Run podcast. Do a podcast on running injuries 3 days a week. So basically, if you sign up, go to docontherun.com and you just either click on that link on the front page to follow the newsletter or any of that, then you'll get notified. And if you go to docontherun.com and go to the podcast tab, there's always something that I give patients, runners to try to use to help figure out what's going on with their injuries. If you sign up for any of those things, you'll also get notified of those live streams. And so, it's interesting. It's helpful for people because most people get specific questions that you don't normally get answered at the doctor's office. This morning, this guy had a question about what this means when he has this weird aching in his pain a year after he had a stress fracture. And, obviously you want to make sure that if you're running, you're not doing any damage to yourself. And in his case, I don't think he is. But we talk about all those kind of things. And, whatever questions you might have, we can certainly talk about them.
So if you've got questions about running, you can check out his podcast and his newsletter. Okay, Chris, so today we're going to talk about healthy tips for runners. One of the things you notice if you start running is you may have issues with your toenails. It's the truth. It happens. It's not nice to talk about, but it's reality, folks. If you walk a lot or if you run or just starting to run, you may run into a few issues with your toenails.
Yeah, it's true. So, unfortunately, your toenails can really take a beating. And I remember many, many years ago, someone said that, I was signed up for my first marathon, and this guy said, you don't get you don't really become a marathon runner when you cross the finish line and get a medal. He said, marathons are earned by long runs in the dark and black toenails. Yeah. And, and so basically it really doesn't take that much to beat up your toenails so that you get a bruise under the nail. And you really, it sounds kind of gross. It sounds, weird. But people do lose their toenails when they run. Yeah. And it's not like you go for a run and suddenly you take off your shoe and it's sitting in your sock or something. You basically get a bruise under the nail. You get swelling between the nail plate and the nail bed that the nail sits on. And then that fluid effectively starts to lift the nail off the nail bed. And yes, that does hurt as that process is happening. And then eventually the nail comes off. Unfortunately, it's not really clean and simple, and it can lead to lots of different problems if that happens. You can get ingrown toenails. You can actually get a toenail fungus infection, where the fungus that causes athlete's foot gets into the nail. Very difficult to treat, honestly. It takes a lot of effort. You could do laser treatment. You can do medications that hurt your liver. There's all kinds of bad options. Your laser treatment's expensive. And it's very difficult, and you don't want it. That's the long and the short of it. And so you have to make sure that you're taking some appropriate steps so that it doesn't happen to you. And it happens to everybody.
And what are the reasons that people can get toenail issues like black toenails? I mean, I've never had the black toenail situation. I've lost toenails from running so much, but what are the reasons behind that? Because that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, so basically there are really three things that cause it. The first one is that your running shoes are too tight. So not surprisingly, if your shoes are too tight, you can beat up the nails and they can fall off. The first time I ever had that happen, I was actually at a place called Enchanted Rock, which is up, kind of north of Fredericksburg and, near Fredericksburg, north of Austin. Went rock climbing there with a buddy of mine. I didn't know the area. And basically it looked like there were some climbing anchors up above this thing that we were going to do. And so I decided I was going to climb something, and then I would set up on these anchors and rappel down to my friend Carl. Well, I made a big mistake. It's very sloped. It's a dome, right? And so I got up there and actually could not find the anchors once I got up there. And I said, okay, well, I guess you can take the gear, I'll take the rope, and I'll hike off the back. Well, my climbing shoes are 2.5 sizes smaller than my street shoes. And so I ended up walking 6 miles in my climbing shoes back to the car. And both of my big toenails turned black and fell off. And now the exact same, so this is from the shoes, basically just squishing the nail so hard that it actually traumatizes them. You get bleeding under the nail. That makes the blackness. It's just a bruise under the nail, and then the nail falls off. So the first thing is, if your running shoes are too tight, if you put them on and they feel too tight, you are asking for trouble. And this happens a lot. Like I bought some Asics running shoes, same shoes I buy all the time, and they were way too tight. And I actually went back to the store and I was like, man, these things feel like 11s. And the guy at the store said, this happens periodically. We'll get an entire run of shoes where all of them are like one size off.
Oh, wow.
And even though the tags were appropriate, they were clearly the wrong size. And so I just immediately went back and returned them. I got bigger ones and that worked out fine. Now, the other thing is that they can be too loose. So believe it or not, if your shoes are too loose, when you're running, well, you're airborne. And then when your foot hits the ground, the friction between the sole of the shoe and the ground stops the shoe immediately. And if your shoes are loose, if you don't lace them tight enough, or the shoes are too big and it's kind of sloppy with where your foot's sliding around in there, you can literally like slide a little bit in the shoe and sort of gently bump up against the end of the shoe. We do that once, that's no big deal. But if you run 20 miles, that's thousands of times that you've whacked the nail. And you can hit it once with a hammer, or you can whack it 10,000 times very gently, and you'll get the same cumulative trauma that basically causes bleeding under the nail and leads to a black toenail. But most runners, what really happens is that, you have the mesh material that lets them breathe, like you're talking about. You go run and you're sweaty, it's hot, even if it rains, your shoes will generally dry out a lot by the end of the run. And that's because they're mesh breathable material. But that material being mesh is actually something that causes a lot of friction. Like something that's very tightly woven like satin is very slippery and low friction, but something that has lots of holes in it is lots of big abrasive fibers like mesh. And when you swing your foot through, as one foot's on the ground, your other foot is sort of in the air and it's swinging from behind you to in front of you to take the next step, you actually pull up with your toes to actually, get your foot out of the way as you swing through. And when your toes swing upward, the nails can actually scrape very gently the inside of the upper on the inside of the shoe. And when that happens, if the nail is catching it all, that little friction of sort of like flicking the nail against the mesh causes this bruising under the nail where you get black toenails. So for me personally, like on my second toes, I know that if I run a marathon, if I do a run more than 20 miles, do an Ironman, anything like that, and I don't take some certain steps to prevent that, they will turn black every time. And so, but if I do these simple things, I did a 50-mile trail race, no issues, because I took some simple steps to make sure that that was not going to be a problem. And, when you're running and you're training, you're doing 20-mile runs, you don't really think of something like filing your toenails as being an important step to success in your race. But it is uncomfortable when it happens.
Yeah. And those little steps mean a lot, because these toenails, if you get a toenail issue, that can take you out. Trust me, it could be something that could take you out.
Well, it sure can. I mean, it is, it's really, really frustrating. I saw somebody from the SF Tri Club. I trained for Ironman France. We all went and had a huge group of people there. And there were a couple of people that literally had to drop out, well over 100 miles into the race because of something like a blister or a painful toenail. And I mean, how terrible is that? You train for a whole year, you go to France, and then you have to tell people, yeah, man, I didn't even get the t-shirt because my toenail hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, it really makes you sound like a wimp, but it really is painful.
Okay, so you have some steps you can take, but what should you do if you have a bruised toenail after a race to treat yourself? Are there some simple things you can do to treat it yourself before you have to go to the doctor?
For sure. So the first thing is, if you think about the process, what happened? Okay, you beat up the nail a little bit. It's basically starting to swell, and that accumulating fluid between the toenail and the nail bed underneath the toenail, that separation is the problem. And so if you get a blister and you compress it or you tape it or something, it prevents it from continuing to swell because it's pressure, right? And it keeps that pressure from the tape or the wrap or whatever, keeps it from swelling more. And so you can do the same thing with the toe. If you have some fluid in there already, any movement of the toe, any movement of the toenail is going to continue to work it loose. And so if you tape the toe, it'll hold it in place. If you use stretchy tape to do that, it'll also compress the toe, and some of that fluid will start to resorb just because of the pressure you've applied to it. And so sort of first aid for this is to, ice it. That actually does help because it stops that by decreasing some of the blood flow in that area in the nail bed. And then if you tape it, it'll actually keep the nail plate stable so it doesn't continue to work itself loose, and it will help it prevent any more accumulation of fluid that could cause it to separate and come off of the toenail bed.
So Chris has a website you can check out if you do have a toe injury while you're running. It's called doc-on-the-run.com/toenail taping. You will have that link in the social media post. So Chris, important subject you're going to talk about next time, blisters.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the 3 avoidable causes of blisters, because man, there's nothing worse than seeing some athlete, I've been on the medical staff at races, and to see somebody at, mile 13 of a marathon, hey, I have a blister, should I pop it or what? This is not what you should be thinking about in the middle of your marathon. Blisters are 100% avoidable. It's kind of like, you shouldn't drive your car 100 miles an hour in the rain, and, you should slow down. And this is one of those things where prevention is really key. It's simple to prevent blisters. And we're going to talk about some of those avoidable causes of blisters in runners next time.
Yeah, and you may be thinking, you know what? I don't run. Well, guess what? You can still get blisters, folks, and this works for people who like to be active, maybe go out for long walks, running as well. Dr. Christopher Segler, he's known as Doc on the Run. We'll have all the social media information on Chris in the post of this show after we post it. Thanks for being here, Chris. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right, Todd. Stay cool.
All right. Take care. All right, we are going to move on to Randee Ramsey. Randee, thanks again for being on the show.
Hey, happy to be here. Always happy to talk to you, Todd.
Yeah, so you're the executive director of SWAMP, the Southwest Alternate Media Project, and you were our Friday film guest. And I've got to apologize because you and I had a great interview. We were zooming through that interview. Then we realized after we were over with that our director's power got knocked out, and the show went dark for a while. So we came back on after we finished your interview. So I apologize for that. We thank you for joining us, though.
No problem. Happy to be here.
So,
I stepped away from the kids for a minute.
You stepped away. I appreciate it because you're teaching right now.
I am. I'm teaching. We're in the week 1 of our teen 3-week film boot camp. This week is developing a character, developing your story, writing it, and then pitching it, because in week 2, we're going to shoot it.
Because this is the Young Filmmakers Summer Boot Camp. Is that right?
Yep. It's a 3-week boot camp, prep, shoot, post.
And how old are the kids in the camp? And maybe you can tell us some of the things you're doing with them.
Our youngest is 12. Our oldest is 17. We have 12 kids. That's our maximum. We sold out, which was great. We're getting them to write their stories, things that are really important to them. And then they're going to pitch those stories. Next week, we have Julie Newlin, a great cinematographer, also an HCC adjunct.
Yeah, we know.
Heading in to spend half a day with the kids. I bribed her, kind of like begged a little barter deal, but they're lucky to have her. She's great. And we have guest speakers coming in. Scott No, a local producer that lots of us know, is in. This week, we've got some entertainment lawyers coming in next week. We've got a sound operator coming in. It's great. We're literally teaching them Film 101 on steroids. It's very fast. They're very tired at the end of the day.
You are the executive director of the Southwest Alternate Media Project.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell people a bit about that, because I'm very familiar with the project, but maybe you can tell our audience a little history of it and what you guys are all about.
Well, we've been around for 40 years, founded in the 1970s, by a couple of guys who thought way ahead of their time. James Blue, one of our founders, was all about citizen filmmakers. He really saw the then new technology of video democratizing filmmaking. And I think, he was a guy that saw way ahead, because now everybody's got a film camera in their pocket, and it's making a huge difference. So we're focused on storytelling, independent artists, and just helping, promoting, and educating our local independent film community here, and just doing all we can to say, hey, Houston's great for cinema. Come, we have it all.
You mentioned everybody's got a camera in their pocket. We all carry a cell phone, which actually takes pretty darn good video. How does that play when you're teaching with students? Are they experts, or know a lot more than you think, or think they know a lot more than you think?
I think they know a lot more. Like, what they know about film and video and storytelling based on what I knew at 15 is huge.
Yeah.
But they are surprised that, like, hey, we actually do need a boom and a mic to have good sound.
Right.
This is why the videos I've been making with my phone are kind of sucky, because I didn't really tell a story. So they know a lot, and they still have a lot to learn. And I think that's great. It's just a really great time to be in cinema, and it's a great time to be in cinema in Houston. You also have a monthly Swamp Salon. What is that all about? So once a month, our members and guests, free to the public, we get together, we do networking. Often we'll screen a new short film or even a new feature. And sometimes we'll read a new screenplay looking for feedback and development help. And we just really look forward to it. In August, we're actually not doing anything useful. It's going to be our Swamp Summer Bash. Everybody's just going to come and see each other in person. Yay.
There you go. We've got one of our students on as a co-host today, and I know she's watching this interview very intensely because you're very interested in film work as well, Carolina, aren't you?
Yes, actually, it's one of the strongest fields in the degree that I graduated from at HCC, from digital media. And I got it here at HCCTV with very little knowledge of video. And now, like over here, I got the practice, and filmmaking is one of the strongest skills that I have.
Well, if you could ask a question about the Swamp Project, what would your question be, Carolina?
Oh, I don't know, because we're talking about young people. How creative can they get? Because at that age, like, your ideas are like going to the sky.
I mean, one of the scripts that they're working on in class is, a guy who's angry and loves conflict, very survivory kind of guy. And he dies and he ends up in heaven, but everyone is a nerd and they're all happy and they all work cooperatively. So it's not really heaven for him. It's kind of hell. So they're literally talking about, yeah, exactly. Like, what is heaven? What is hell? I'm like, dude, you're 14. At 14, I was like, boys are icky and I really like pizza. And that was the extent to my depth. But
yeah. And when's the next Star Wars movie coming out?
Exactly. Absolutely. So we have the teens right now, but we do support filmmakers of all ages and genres throughout the year. And that's pretty important to us.
And Randee, you've got an event that's coming up in this fall that sounds interesting, and also something that moves from one neighborhood to another. Maybe you could tell us about that.
So this year is our first art, film, and music festival presented by Swamp. The nexus of filmmaking in a lot of cases for music and film is music videos. So we're going to host some bands that have worked with local filmmakers. We're going to screen their music videos. We're going to have live music. We're doing an art walk along with it. We're starting in Oak Forest. We're going to have a high school film competition that's a component of that. That'll screen Friday night, Saturday all day. We're out there with the artists and musicians. It's going to be just a lot of fun. But because Houston is so diverse and so big and has so much to offer, we're literally going to move this festival from one neighborhood to another. And every time that we go to a new neighborhood, we're going to fundraise for a project that benefits that neighborhood.
That's cool.
So in Oak Forest, we're going to raise some money for the pool right there at Oak Forest Park where we're doing the event. And we're also fundraising for Young Filmmakers and Emerging Filmmakers Fund for those starting out, because, the $1,500, $2,000 to a filmmaker on their first film can be a big deal.
Oh,
it's the difference between finishing and not finishing. So, it doesn't have to be a $5 million budget. I'm shooting a film in 3 weeks that the budget's under $500,000.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you mention music videos are still a thing. That was really one of my first jobs in TV. I worked for the competitor of MTV. Back when they used to play music videos.
Yeah, when they were music.
Yeah, and that was obviously a big thing in the music world back then. I didn't realize they were still a big deal because you just don't see many of them on TV, but I guess they are.
Yeah, well, they're a great way to promote your music around the world, and they get a lot of likes. You put them on YouTube, you put them on, lots of people use them. Oh my gosh, TikTok. I had a moment where I was like, oh gosh, TikTok. And they're still very much. And, we do a lot of them in Houston and people forget. I just don't think people realize.
You also finally have one thing coming up with a wildlife workshop. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, so we are working with the Brazos Bend Conservancy, and we are going to teach a wildlife cinematography workshop. It's a multi-weekend workshop with a cinematographer who was literally on the Nautilus with Jacques Cousteau. So highly qualified. And it's a different kind of cinematography. It's a completely different thing. You're not dealing with people. You got to have a lot of patience. And we're excited to work with, another community partner. It's our first partnership with them. Right now we're here at Creed Global Media and the International Entertainment Partnership. They've graciously let us use their space for our camp. We work with Houston Media Source. We work with Real Abilities Film Festival. We're just psyched to work with anybody who wants to do film in Houston. We're here, ready to help, whatever you need.
Randee Ramsey, Executive Director of SWAMP, the Southwest Alternate Media Project, also an HCC adjunct. Thanks for being here this morning.
Super excited. Thanks, Todd, for having me.
Good seeing you again.
You too.
All right, we're going to move on to our announcements. First off, we want to congratulate Dr. Fabian Vega. Dr. Fabian Vega has been named Dean of Social and Behavioral Sciences. He previously worked at Hudson Valley Community and Baltimore Community College. Congratulations, Dr. Fabian Vega. ABC Dr. Jerome Drain says his professional experiences and dedication to the social sciences will serve him well in his brand new role. Okay, Lunch and Learn happening today, Carolina.
Yeah, HCC Records Management focuses on the compliance, but it's also pivotal for in case of a disaster. So in order to document important historical events and situations. So you can learn about how to manage the managing records for your department on Wednesday, July 14th at 11:30 a.m. with Melissa Gonzalez. She's the manager of talent learning. And registration is required, so please check your emails. So use your HCC email to check and register.
Okay, I'm going to skip down to announcements. Free money with HERF, because this is very important for our students to know. The Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, better known as HERF, is rolling out its third round of funding in response to the COVID pandemic. HCC is receiving $59 million for our students. $59 million. Students enrolled in the fall can get help with cost of tuition, fees, books, supplies, housing, food, transportation, childcare, healthcare. That money can be used for all of those needs. You have to request it. You have to apply for it. There are some qualifications like being a student in the fall. Let's say you have scholarships that pay for a bit of your tuition. You have maybe the grants that pay for a good chunk of it, but you still have some that you're responsible for. This will pick that up. It'll pay for that. And then you can use some of the money for living expenses, childcare, getting your car fixed so maybe you can get to and from school. All of that money can be used for that, but you have to apply for it. It's not an endless supply. It's 59 million, but that will go fast because there's a need for it. So students, you want free tuition this fall, you want to go to school and have your tuition and your costs paid for, now's the time to do it. Make sure you enroll for the fall. And we'll have the address for enrolling. In fact, let's go ahead and jump to that right now. Carolina, tell the students, if you would, and our audience about enrolling for the fall, because we're enrolling right now.
Yes, so please do it as early as possible for the registration. So fall enrollment is open, and there are 5 different options. So the first one is online anytime, like the classes you've been taking before COVID happened. It's a regular online class. And online on a schedule. So this one's different because it's on a scheduled dates and times. The third one is hybrid. You will have a lab class that meets safely face-to-face on campus and virtually. And the hybrid course is a lecture class that meets safely face-to-face on campus and virtually. Now, the last one that was added was the in-person. Now we're taking face-to-face classes, but these classes are small. So early registration is highly encouraged. And you can visit the hccs.edu/now link to register.
That's right. Register today, register early. Okay, that's going to wrap up the show for today. Tomorrow, we've got the new mayor of Stafford on the show, Cecil Willis, who has some big shoes to fill. Of course, Mayor Leonard Scarcella, who'd been the mayor of Stafford for more than 50 years. That's exactly right. He passed away, sadly, last year. And Mayor Cecil Willis, who has been involved with the city for quite some time, he is going to be our guest on the show. So we look forward to speaking with him. And it's Virtual Family Fun Day tomorrow. Hey, the folks from Colonial Williamsburg will be here. That's going to be a lot of fun. We love that place. All right, Carolina, thanks for being here this week. Are you back tomorrow, or when are you back again?
I'm going to check on our schedule to see if I'm going to be back tomorrow or maybe next week.
All right. Okay. One way or another, she'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. live up to the minute. We'll see you then.